After 44 years, her husband handed her $2 in court, but he had no idea what she already owned. The courtroom was too quiet for something like this. Papers stacked neatly, a judge waiting. And then he slid a worn $2 bill across the table like it meant nothing. Lillian didn't argue, didn't cry. She just stared at it. Because something about that bill felt familiar, and that feeling was about to change everything she thought she'd lost. What would you have done in that moment? Taken the $2 and walked away, or stopped and looked closer? The courtroom smelled faintly of dust and old paper. It was the kind of room that had seen too many endings, too many quiet defeats dressed up as procedure. Lillian Harper sat at the front table, hands folded neatly in her lap. She had chosen that position deliberately, back straight, shoulders squared, the same posture she used for 40 years when standing behind a cafeteria counter, serving children who rarely looked her in the eye. The fluorescent lights hummed above her, a low, steady buzz. It made everything feel slightly unreal. Outside, through the narrow windows, the trees had already turned. Late autumn, gray sky pressing low over the town, the kind of cold that slipped into your bones and stayed there. 72 years old, she thought, and this is where it ends. Across the room, Gerald Harper shifted in his chair. Her husband. 44 years of marriage sat between them like something that had already been cleared away. Papers stacked, signatures filed, history reduced to documents clipped neatly at the corners. He looked well. He always did. Dark coat, clean lines, hair trimmed close, still more salt than white. The kind of man who had always known where he belonged in a room like this. Beside him sat his attorney, flipping through a folder with quiet efficiency. Behind them, Gerald's sister leaned forward, whispering something to their nephew. A small smile passed between them. Not loud, not careless, just enough. Lillian noticed it. She noticed everything. The judge entered without ceremony. A woman in her 60s, glasses low on her nose, voice steady and practiced. Let's proceed. Chairs shifted, papers moved. A pen clicked somewhere in the back. Lillian didn't move. She had prepared herself for this moment, not with speeches, not with arguments, just with silence. The attorney spoke first. Words like assets and distribution floated across the room. Clean words, professional, detached. Lillian heard them, but they didn't land. Not really. Because she already knew. There was nothing in her name. Not the house she had cleaned for decades. Not the accounts she had never seen. Not the business she had helped build in ways that never made it onto paper. She had signed things over the years. Of course she had. Just routine, Gerald would say. She had trusted him. That was the part no one wrote down. The judge nodded once, then looked toward Gerald. Mr. Harper. Gerald stood. Not quickly, not slowly, just certain. He didn't look at Lillian at first. Instead, he adjusted his cuff, smoothed the front of his jacket, and stepped forward. When he finally turned, his eyes met hers for only a second. There was no anger there. No guilt either, just distance, like she was someone he used to know. He reached into his pocket. A small movement, almost casual. At first, Lillian thought it might be a handkerchief, or maybe a folded paper. But it wasn't. It was a bill. He held it between two fingers, then placed it on the table in front of her. It made a soft sound against the wood. Barely audible. Still, it echoed. A worn $2 bill, creased, faded, the edges soft from years of being handled. He pushed it forward slightly, as if aligning it with the edge of the table. "That's your share," he said. His voice was calm, clear enough for everyone to hear. For a second, no one moved. Then, behind him, a quiet chuckle. His sister again. She didn't try to hide it this time, just covered her mouth with her hand, shoulders lifting slightly. The nephew glanced down, smiling at something on his phone. The judge didn't react. Her expression didn't change at all. Lillian stared at the bill. $2. It sat there, flat and ordinary, like it belonged in a drawer, or at the bottom of a purse. Not here, not in this room, not after 44 years. She felt something shift inside her chest. Not sharp, not sudden, just heavy, like a door closing somewhere deep where she couldn't reach it. She thought of the kitchen table at home, the one she had wiped clean every night. The way Gerald liked his coffee. Strong, no sugar. The sound of his footsteps coming in late, the smell of outside clinging to his coat. All of it. All of that time. And now this. $2. She didn't feel anger. That surprised her. No heat. No rush. Just a quiet, spreading emptiness. As if someone had taken a long story and erased everything except the last line. She became aware of her hands, still folded in her lap. Dry skin, faint lines, a small scar near her thumb from years ago, cut on a broken dish that had slipped while she was washing up after one of Gerald's dinners. She hadn't even told him about that. It hadn't seemed important. Now she wasn't sure what had ever been. "Mrs. Harper," the judge said, her voice steady, "do you understand the terms being presented?" Lillian lifted her eyes slowly. The room came back into focus. The bench, the papers, Gerald standing there, waiting. She nodded once. Yes. Her voice didn't sound like she expected. It sounded distant, like it belonged to someone sitting behind her. The judge watched her for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. Very well. Gerald stepped back. He didn't look at her again. The bill remained where he had placed it. Lillian looked down at it once more. It seemed smaller now. Or maybe everything else had just grown larger around it. She drew in a breath, low, careful, then let it out. $2. She thought, not for the first time, that there were things in life that couldn't be measured. And yet, here it was, measured anyway. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. She just sat there, looking at the small, worn piece of paper that had somehow come to stand in for an entire life. And for the first time that morning, she felt something close to disbelief. Not at him, not even at the situation, but at how quietly everything had slipped away, without her ever really noticing. Until now. The courtroom didn't change. The same hum, the same cold light, the same quiet shifting of papers. But something inside Lillian had. She looked down at the table again, at the $2 bill. Then, slowly, her gaze drifted beyond it, to the stack of documents sitting just out of reach. Her name appeared there. She could see it from where she sat, typed neatly, signed carefully. Her own handwriting. A strange thing, to recognize your name and feel no connection to it. Her mind began to move. Not fast, not in panic, just steadily, like something waking up after a long sleep. 44 years. She didn't see them all at once. They came in pieces. A kitchen lit by a single overhead bulb. Early mornings. Coffee brewing before the sun came up. Gerald reading the paper, barely looking up as she set the mug beside him. "You're up early?" he'd say sometimes, not unkindly. "I always am," she would answer. And he would nod, as if that explained everything. Another memory. The textile mill. The sound hit first. Machines rattling, spinning, never stopping. The smell of fabric dust in the air. It clung to her clothes, her hair, her skin. Double shifts, more often than not. She would come home with her feet aching, hands stiff, shoulders tight. Gerald would already be there. "Long day?" he'd ask, glancing up from his chair. "Yes." "Good," he'd say. "We'll need the extra this month." She had never questioned that. Not once. Her eyes moved again, back to the present. The courtroom, the table, the bill. She could feel the weight of the past settling around her, not as something dramatic, not overwhelming, just present. Like it had always been there. She thought of the house, not the building itself. The work. The constant invisible work. Polishing the floors before his business dinners. Making sure the glasses matched. The napkins folded just right. Learning names, wives, children, preferences. Mr. Dalton doesn't eat onions. Mrs. Crane prefers tea, not coffee. She had kept all of it in her head. Gerald had smiled through those evenings. Confident, relaxed. People liked him. They trusted him. She had helped make that happen. She saw it clearly now. But none of that had been written anywhere. Not in the documents, not in the records, not in the neat stack of papers sitting on the table across from her. "Mrs. Harper?" The judge's voice pulled her back. Lillian lifted her head. "Yes? Are you prepared to respond to the settlement?" "Prepared." The word lingered. She glanced once more at Gerald. He had already sat down again. His attention was on his attorney now. Quiet conversation. Low voices. He wasn't watching her. That, more than anything, settled something inside her. She looked down again. At the bill. $2. Her hand moved, almost on its own. She reached forward. Her fingers hovered just above the paper. For a moment, she didn't touch it. She simply looked. At the faded green ink. At the creases running through it. At the way the edges curled slightly, as if it had been folded and unfolded too many times. A strange detail came to her then. The smell. Faint. But there. Not the courtroom. Not the wood or the paper. Something older. Tobacco. Dry. Familiar. Her father used to carry that scent. Not strongly. Not like some men. Just enough that it lingered on his jacket when he came in from outside. She blinked. The memory passed quickly. Too quickly to catch. Her fingers closed around the bill. It felt thinner than she expected. Lighter. As if it might tear if she held it too tightly. She lifted it slightly, just enough to bring it closer. No one spoke. No one stopped her. Across the room, someone shifted in their seat. A pen tapped lightly against a notebook. The judge watched. Quiet. Patient. Lillian stared at the bill. 44 years. And this was what remained. She felt a hollow space open somewhere deep in her chest. Not pain. Not exactly. More like absence. As if something had been removed without her noticing when it happened. She thought of her son. Grown now, living in another state. Calls on holidays, sometimes birthdays. He had taken Gerald's side. Not directly, not openly. But enough. "I don't want to get involved," he had said. She hadn't argued. She never had been one for arguments. Her grip on the bill tightened slightly. The paper bent under her fingers. Still, she didn't look away. She waited. For something. A feeling. A reaction. Anger. Maybe. Or grief. But neither came. Only that same quiet emptiness. The judge spoke again. "Mrs. Harper, do you accept the terms as presented?" The question settled into the room. Heavy. Final. Lillian lowered the bill back onto the table, not pushing it away, not pulling it closer, just placing it there. She looked at it one last time, then lifted her eyes. "Yes," she said. The word came easily, too easily, as if it had been waiting. Gerald's attorney nodded, already reaching for the paperwork. A pen was placed in front of her. Another small sound against the wood. Lillian looked at it, then at the documents. Her name waited again. In black ink. Clear. Precise. She picked up the pen. It felt heavier than it should have. Her hand hovered above the page. For a second, just a second, she hesitated. Then she lowered the pen and prepared to sign. Because there was nothing left to claim. Nothing left to hold on to. Nothing left that was hers. Or so she believed. The pen hovered just above the paper. Lillian's hand didn't shake. Not exactly. It simply paused. A small hesitation, barely noticeable to anyone watching. But to her, it felt like something had caught, like a thread snagging on rough wood. She lowered the pen slightly, then stopped. The room remained still. Gerald's attorney shifted, waiting. The judge's eyes stayed on her, calm but expectant. Lillian's attention drifted, not to the document, not to the judge. Back to the bill. That small, worn piece of paper sitting just inches from her hand. She hadn't meant to look at it again. But she did. And this time she noticed something she hadn't before. The fold. It wasn't random. It ran clean across the middle, slightly off-center, as if it had been folded the same way over and over again, not carelessly, not shoved into a pocket, deliberately. She set the pen down. The sound was soft, but it carried. Gerald's attorney looked up. "Mrs. Harper?" he said, polite but with a hint of impatience. Lillian didn't answer. She reached for the bill again, slower this time. Her fingers touched it lightly, as if testing whether it was real. It was. She lifted it, turned it slightly between her fingers. The paper caught the overhead light. The faded green ink seemed thinner up close, worn by time. And then, there it was again. That smell. Faint, but unmistakable. Old tobacco. Her breath caught, just for a second. Not sharply, not enough for anyone else to notice. But enough. A memory stirred. Not fully, not clear. Just The shape of something. A table, wooden, scratched along the edges. Voices, laughter, the clink of glasses. She blinked. The courtroom faded slightly around her. Not disappearing, just softening. She turned the bill over. The back was lighter, the ink thinner. At first it looked empty, just the usual design. But as she tilted it, just slightly, something shifted. A faint line, then another. Barely there. She leaned closer. Her eyes narrowed. The marks were so light, they almost disappeared under the glare of the fluorescent lights. But they were there. Not random. Not stains. Lines. Faint pencil impressions pressed into the paper. Her fingers moved carefully along the surface. She could feel them. Subtle ridges. Indented. Written. Her heartbeat changed. Not faster. Just different. More present. Mrs. Harper, the judge said again, a little firmer this time. Is there an issue? Lillian didn't look up. Just a moment, she said quietly. Her voice was steady, surprisingly so. She turned the bill again, angling it toward the light. The lines became clearer. Numbers. She could see that now, not fully readable, but structured, grouped, intentional. A strange feeling crept in. Not hope. Not yet. Something closer to recognition. That was when the memory came back. Not all at once. In pieces. Like stepping into a room you hadn't visited in years and slowly remembering where everything used to be. The engagement dinner. Her father's house. The old dining table. Too small for the number of people crammed around it. Gerald sitting across from her. Younger. Louder. Confident in a way that had once felt exciting. Her father at the head of the table. Quiet. Watching more than speaking. She could see it now. Clearer with each second. The moment. Gerald reaching into his pocket, pulling something out. A bill. Holding it between his fingers with a slight grin. Guess this makes it official, he had said. Light laughter around the table. Her father had taken it. Looked at it for a moment, then nodded once. Said nothing, just folded it, carefully, and set it aside. Lillian's breath slowed. The courtroom came back into focus. Gerald, the judge, the attorney, all still waiting, all unaware. She looked down at the bill in her hand, the same fold, the same faint scent. Her father's hands had touched this. She was certain of it now. Not a guess. Not a feeling. A certainty that settled quietly into place. She turned it once more, focused on the marks, the numbers. Her eyes traced them slowly. They didn't make sense yet. But they weren't meant to be random. She knew that much. A small shift happened inside her, so small it might have gone unnoticed. But it was there. The emptiness she had felt before, it didn't disappear. But it moved, made room for something else. A question. She lowered the bill slightly, then looked at the document again. Her name. Waiting. Final. Permanent. Her hand moved back toward the pen, then stopped. Again. This time, the hesitation lasted longer. Gerald noticed. For the first time since placing the bill on the table, he looked directly at her. Lillian, he said quietly, not unkindly. Let's just finish this. Finish. The word echoed. She glanced at him. Really looked. At the lines around his eyes, the slight impatience in his posture, the way he already seemed elsewhere, as if this moment had already passed for him. She looked back down at the bill. Then, carefully, she flattened it against the table, smoothed it with her fingers. Her thumb lingered over the faint markings. She could feel them, even without looking. There was something here. She didn't know what. Not yet. But it was enough. Enough to stop her. Mrs. Harper, the judge said, her tone now more deliberate. Do you intend to proceed? Lillian lifted her head, met the judge's eyes. There was a brief silence. Then she spoke. Yes, she said. But she didn't pick up the pen. Instead, she kept her hand resting on the bill. As if for the first time that morning, she wasn't quite ready to let it go. The silence stretched. Not long, but long enough for everyone to notice. Gerald shifted in his chair. His fingers tapped once against the table before he caught himself. His attorney leaned closer, whispering something under his breath. The judge watched Lillian carefully now. Mrs. Harper, she said, measured, patient. If there's a concern, you may state it. Lillian didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped back to the bill, to the faint lines pressed into its surface. Her thumb moved slowly across it, feeling the shallow grooves again. Numbers. She was certain now. Not random, not accidental. Something written, something meant to last. She drew in a quiet breath. I would like some time, she said. Her voice came out softer than she expected, but it didn't break. The room reacted almost instantly. Gerald's attorney straightened. Your Honor, the terms have already been... The judge lifted a hand, stopping him. How much time are you requesting, Mrs. Harper? Lillian looked up. She hadn't thought that far. Not really, but something inside her had already made the decision. Just until tomorrow, she said. A pause. Gerald let out a small breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh, not quite irritation. Something in between. The judge studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. One day, she said, we'll reconvene at 9 a.m. The gavel didn't come down hard, just a quiet tap. But it ended everything. For now. The motel sat just off the highway. A low, single-story building with peeling paint and a flickering sign that buzzed faintly in the dusk. Room 12. The key was heavy in Lillian's hand. She pushed the door open slowly. The air inside was stale. A mix of old carpet, cheap detergent, and something faintly metallic. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in a dull gray light from the parking lot. She stepped inside, closed the door behind her. For a moment, she just stood there, listening. To nothing. No machines humming, no voices in the next room, no clinking dishes or footsteps overhead. Just quiet. A different kind of quiet than the courtroom. This one settled in around her. The bedspread was patterned in faded browns and oranges. The lamp beside it leaned slightly to one side, its shade yellowed with age. She set her purse down on the small table. Then, carefully, she reached into her coat pocket and took out the bill. It felt different here. Lighter. Or maybe the room was just heavier. She placed it on the table beneath the lamp. Turned the switch. The light flickered once before steadying. Warm, dim, but enough. Lillian pulled the chair out and sat. She didn't rush, didn't lean forward right away. She just looked at it. $2. 44 years. She let that thought pass without holding on to it. Instead, she focused on the paper, the fold, the edges, the faint discoloration near one corner. Her fingers moved slowly, smoothing it flat again. Then she leaned closer. The pencil marks were easier to see here, not because they were clearer, but because she was alone. No eyes on her. No pressure. She tilted the bill slightly, catching the light at an angle. There. The lines appeared again. Faint, pressed deep enough into the paper to leave a trace. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small notepad, the same one she had carried for years. Grocery lists, phone numbers, reminders written in careful, even handwriting. She picked up a pen, then paused, looked at the bill again. Her eyes traced the markings slowly. One set at a time. She leaned even closer, almost close enough to touch her face to the paper. 38, she murmured under her breath. The numbers were incomplete at first, broken by the light, hard to follow. She adjusted the angle again. 72. Her pen moved. Carefully, writing them down exactly as she saw them. Not guessing, not filling in gaps, just recording. Line by line. It took time. More than she expected. The room grew darker as evening settled in. The light from the parking lot shifted, headlights passing occasionally across the curtains. She didn't notice. She stayed focused. When she finished, she leaned back slightly, looked at what she had written. 3 groups of numbers, separated, structured. She stared at them. They didn't mean anything yet. Not clearly. But they weren't random. She knew that. A memory stirred again. Not the dinner this time. Something else. Her father's voice. Low. Steady. Everything has a place, Lillian, he used to say when she was young. You just have to look at it the right way. She hadn't thought about that in years. Not since before he got sick. Not since before the farm. The thought stopped there. The farm. She sat up a little straighter. Her pen tapped once against the notepad. The farm had been sold. She remembered that clearly. The drive out there. The papers. Her father sitting quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window the entire way. She had believed it, never questioned it, because there had been no reason to. She looked down at the numbers again. Something about them. Coordinates. The word came to her slowly. Not certain, but close enough. She had seen them before. On maps, on old weather reports, on television. Latitude, longitude. Her fingers tightened slightly around the pen. Could that be what this was? She didn't know. Not yet. But it felt possible. She reached for her purse again, dug through it until she found her old address book. Worn leather cover, edges soft from years of use. She flipped it open. Pages filled with names, numbers, notes written in margins. Near the back, there, her father's name. Still there. She hadn't crossed it out, hadn't had the heart to. Beside it, an address. The farm. She stared at it. then back at the numbers. Then again. Something didn't match. Not exactly. But something connected. She couldn't explain it. Not yet. But she felt it. That same small shift inside her. The one that had started in the courtroom. Growing quietly. She set the address book down, looked at the bill again, then at the numbers she had written. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What were you trying to show me?" The room didn't answer. Of course it didn't. But she didn't feel as alone as she had before. Not entirely. She folded the bill carefully, not the way Gerald had. Not careless, deliberate. The same fold it already carried. Then she placed it back in her coat pocket, close, where she could feel it. Lillian turned off the lamp. The room fell into shadow. She lay down on the bed without undressing. Eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The numbers repeated in her mind, over and over. Not making sense yet, but refusing to leave. Tomorrow. She would go back. Finish it. Sign the papers. End it. But something told her, not everything was ending. Not yet. Morning came quietly. No alarm. No urgency. Just a pale light pushing through the thin motel curtains, turning the room a dull gray. Lillian opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she did. The courtroom, the bill, the numbers. Her hand moved instinctively to her coat, draped over the chair beside the bed. She reached into the pocket. The paper was still there. Folded. Waiting. She sat up. The room felt smaller in the daylight. The stains on the carpet more visible. The chipped paint near the door harder to ignore. Real. Everything felt more real. She unfolded the bill again, smoothing it against the table. The numbers were still faint, but now she knew where to look. She traced them again with her eyes, then reached for the notepad. Compared. Checked. The same. No mistake. She picked up her address book next. Turned to the page with her father's name. The old farm address stared back at her. She hadn't visited in years. Not since the day she believed it had been sold. She remembered that day now with a strange clarity. Her father had been quiet. More than usual. He had signed the papers without hesitation, without explanation. She had asked once softly, "Are you sure about this?" He had nodded. "That's what needs to be done," he said, and she had accepted that. Because that's what she had always done. Accepted. She looked back at the numbers, then at the address. They didn't match exactly, but they felt connected. Close enough to matter. Lillian stood, slowly. Her knees protested slightly, but she ignored it. She walked to the sink, turned on the tap, let the water run cold over her hands. The sound filled the small room. Steady, grounding. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. The same face she had seen for years. But something behind it had shifted. Not stronger. Not yet. But awake. She dried her hands carefully, then picked up her purse. The notepad, the bill, the address book. She placed them all inside, closed it. The decision came without ceremony. No speech, no moment of clarity, just movement. She stepped outside. The air was sharp, cooler than the day before. Cars passed on the highway beyond the motel, a low, constant rush. She walked to the bus stop at the edge of the lot. Waited. When the bus came, she climbed on without hesitation. "Downtown?" the driver asked. She nodded. The ride was quiet. A few passengers, heads down, no one speaking. Lillian sat by the window, watched the town pass by. Familiar places. The grocery store she used to visit every Friday. The pharmacy where she picked up prescriptions for Gerald, never her own. The bank. She looked at it a little longer than the others, then looked away. The bus stopped near the public library. She stepped off. The building stood the same as it always had. Brick, wide steps, heavy doors that resisted just slightly when pushed. Inside, the air smelled of paper and dust and something older. Comforting, in a way. She hadn't been here in years, not since her son was in school. She walked to the front desk. A young woman looked up, polite but distracted. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Lillian said. "I'm looking for property records." The woman nodded, gestured toward the back. "Second floor, local archives." Lillian thanked her and made her way up. The stairs were slow going but steady. At the top, the room opened into rows of filing cabinets, old computers and shelves filled with binders. Quiet. Very quiet. A man sat at one of the desks, typing slowly. He didn't look up. Lillian approached a computer. Sat down. The chair creaked beneath her. She adjusted it slightly, then leaned forward. The screen flickered to life. She hesitated, then typed in the address from her book. The system took a moment, then loaded. She scanned the results. Her eyes moved carefully, line by line. The property appeared. The farm. Still listed. She blinked. That didn't make sense. She clicked deeper. Ownership records. Transfer history. Her breath slowed. The last recorded transfer, 32 years ago. She leaned closer. The name on the document wasn't Gerald's, wasn't even hers. Not exactly. It was her maiden name. Lillian Brooks. Her fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the desk. That wasn't possible. Or maybe it was. She opened another record, then another. Each one told the same story. The property had never been sold. Not in the way she believed. It had been transferred. Placed somewhere. Protected. Hidden. Her mind moved quickly now. Faster than it had in years. She reached into her purse, pulled out the notepad, looked at the numbers again. Coordinates. It had to be. She didn't need confirmation. Not yet. She could feel it. Something her father had done. Something he had never explained. Something she had never thought to question. Until now. Lillian sat back in the chair. The room around her stayed quiet. Unchanged. But inside, everything had shifted. She closed the record slowly, turned off the screen, stood. Her legs felt steadier than they had the day before. Not stronger, just certain. She walked out of the library without speaking to anyone. The air outside felt different now. Sharper, clearer. She stood on the steps for a moment, looking out at the street. Then she reached into her purse again, took out the bill, unfolded it, held it up to the light. The faint numbers were still there. Waiting. She traced them once more with her eyes, then folded the bill again. carefully, the same way her father had, and slipped it back into her pocket. This time, not as something given to her, but as something she had found. Lillian turned toward the road, toward the edge of town, toward the place she had believed was gone. She didn't know exactly what she would find, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going back to that courtroom the same woman who had left it. Not anymore. The road out of town hadn't changed much. Still narrow, still uneven in places, still lined with old fences that leaned just slightly, like they'd grown tired of standing straight. Lillian sat near the front of the bus this time, not by the window, closer to the aisle. Her purse rested firmly on her lap, one hand placed over it, fingers curled lightly as if holding something steady inside. The numbers stayed with her, not just in her mind, in her body. A quiet pull. The bus driver didn't say much, just nodded when she stepped on and told him where she was headed. Not much out that way anymore, he said, adjusting the mirror. Lillian didn't respond. She kept her eyes forward. The town faded behind them. Buildings gave way to open stretches of land, patches of brown fields, occasional clusters of trees stripped bare by the season. The sky hung low, flat and gray, the kind of sky that made distances feel longer. Time stretched out. She didn't check her watch, didn't need to. She knew where she was going, even if she didn't yet understand why. The bus slowed after a while. "End of the line?" the driver called out. She stood carefully, stepped down onto the gravel shoulder. The bus pulled away with a low rumble, leaving her in the quiet. No traffic, no voices, just wind moving across open land. She stood there for a moment, taking it in. The air smelled different out here, cleaner, colder, with something underneath it. Earth. She adjusted her coat, then started walking. The road curved gently ahead. She recognized it. Not immediately, but gradually, like something coming into focus. She had driven this road once, years ago. Sitting behind the wheel, her father beside her, neither of them speaking much. She had thought that day was an ending. Now, it felt like something else. The gravel crunched beneath her shoes. Steady. Rhythmic. She followed the numbers in her mind, turned where they seemed to lead. Past a rusted gate, down a narrower path, half covered with weeds that had pushed through over time. It didn't look maintained, not at first. But the further she walked, the more something shifted. The fence lines straightened. The ground evened out. Subtle. But there. Then, she saw it. The house. It stood at the end of the path, exactly where it had always been. White paint, though faded now. The porch still intact. The windows clean. Not broken, not boarded. Clean. Lillian stopped. Her breath caught, not sharply, but enough. This wasn't what she expected. Not ruins, not abandonment. The place was alive. Quiet, but cared for. She took a step forward, then another. The wind moved through the trees beside the house, branches creaking softly. A sound she remembered. She reached the edge of the yard. The grass wasn't overgrown, not perfectly trimmed, but managed. Someone had been here. Recently. Her eyes moved across the details. The porch steps, solid, not rotted. The railing, repaired in places. A bucket near the side of the house turned upside down, not left randomly. Placed, intentional. Her heart shifted again, not faster, but deeper. She walked toward the porch, each step careful, measured. The boards creaked as she climbed them. The same sound. The exact same sound. She paused halfway up, closed her eyes for just a second, let the memory settle, then opened them again. The front door stood closed, painted the same dull green it had always been. She reached out. Her hand hovered just above the surface, then touched it. Cool, solid, real. She pushed. The door didn't open. Locked. Of course. She stepped back slightly, looked around again, trying to understand, trying to connect what she was seeing with what she thought she knew. It didn't match. None of it matched. She moved along the side of the house, her shoes pressed into the dirt path that had formed there over time. The garden. It was still there. Not the way it had been when she was young, but not gone either. Rows faintly visible. Soil turned. Recently. She crouched slightly, ran her fingers along the ground. Soft. Not neglected. Her breath left her slowly. Someone had been tending this place, not just passing through, staying, caring. She stood again, turned toward the back of the house. The barn, it stood too. Roof repaired, doors closed but aligned. No collapse, no decay. Everything was held together. Lillian felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not confusion anymore. Not just that, something heavier, stronger. Expectation. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the bill, unfolded it. The numbers were still faint, but now they felt louder somehow. Clearer. She looked from the bill to the house, then back again. "This was never gone," she said quietly. The words felt strange in her mouth, but true. She walked back toward the front porch. Slower now, more aware. Every detail mattered, every sound, every mark. She climbed the steps again, stood in front of the door. Her hand rested against it, not pushing this time, just there, waiting, listening. As if the house itself might answer. The wind moved again. Soft, steady. Lillian opened her eyes, looked at the door one more time, then stepped back. She wasn't going to force it. Not yet. If this place had been kept, if it had been protected, then there was a reason. And she would find it. The same way she had found the numbers. Carefully. Patiently. On her own. She folded the bill again, placed it back in her pocket, then turned her gaze across the land. The fields stretched out beyond the house. Quiet. Waiting. Just like the house. Just like the truth she hadn't seen before. And for the first time since stepping onto that bus, Lillian understood one thing clearly. This place hadn't been lost. It had been left. For her. She just hadn't known it. Lillian stood on the porch a long time before she moved again. The wind passed through the trees, carrying a dry rustle that sounded almost like a whisper. The house didn't answer her. It didn't open. It didn't welcome her in. But it didn't push her away either. It waited. She stepped down from the porch and circled the house once more, slower this time. Not searching randomly now, observing. taking in every detail like it mattered. Because now, it did. The side window near the kitchen was slightly open. Not enough to notice from a distance, just enough that the frame didn't sit flush. She stopped, looked closer. The latch inside had been left loose, not broken. Left. Her hand moved carefully, pushing the window just a little farther. It gave without resistance. A faint smell drifted out. Old wood. Soap. Something clean. Her chest tightened. She placed her hand on the sill and leaned in, steadying herself. Then, slowly, she climbed through. Her feet touched the floor inside with a soft, hollow sound. She stood still. Let her eyes adjust. The kitchen looked almost exactly as she remembered. The same narrow table near the window, the same cabinet doors, worn along the edges where hands had opened them for years. A dish rack sat by the sink. Empty, but dry. No dust. Not the thick kind that settles over abandoned places. This room had been used. Not recently, maybe, but not forgotten. Lillian walked forward slowly, her footsteps cautious against the wooden floor. Each board creaked beneath her weight. The same creaks, the same uneven rhythm. Her eyes moved across the room. The clock above the doorway had stopped, but it hadn't been removed. The chair by the corner was still angled slightly outward, just like her father used to leave it after sitting there in the evenings. Nothing had been rearranged. It was as if time had stepped out, but hadn't taken anything with it. She reached out and touched the table, ran her fingers across its surface. Smooth, clean, maintained. Her breath came slow and steady. She turned, moving deeper into the house. The living room was the same. The worn sofa, the small bookshelf, the lamp with the crooked shade. Everything held in place like a memory that refused to fade. But Lillian didn't linger. Not this time. She had come here for something. She just didn't know what it was yet. Her hand slipped into her coat pocket again. The bill. She unfolded it, looked at the numbers, then at the room around her. "Where?" she murmured. The house didn't answer, but she listened anyway. She moved slowly, comparing. The numbers weren't random, she knew that. They had to point to something. Not outside. Inside. She walked back into the kitchen, stood still, looked down. The floorboards. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The boards weren't perfectly even. Most of them showed the same wear, scratches, slight discoloration, marks from years of use. But one section, near the table, just off-center, looked different. Not new, but less worn. Her heart shifted again. Not faster, just sharper. She stepped closer, knelt down slowly, her knees protesting but holding. She ran her hand over the wood. The grain felt the same. But the edges were slightly cleaner, as if they had been lifted before, more than once. Her fingers pressed lightly. Nothing moved. She looked at the bill again, then back at the floor. The numbers. Coordinates, or maybe a combination. Her breath caught, just slightly. She tapped the board gently with her knuckles. A dull sound. Then she tapped the one beside it. Solid. Different. She tapped again. Listened. Compared. The sound wasn't the same. Not hollow exactly, but not solid either. Something beneath it. Her hand moved to the edge, She pressed harder this time, felt a slight shift. Barely there. Enough. Lillian leaned her weight carefully. Her fingers found a small gap, almost invisible. She slid her nails into it. Pulled. At first, nothing. Then a soft release. The board lifted just slightly. Her breath slowed. She adjusted her grip. Lifted again. This time it came free, not easily, but willingly. She set it aside, looked down. A dark space beneath the floor, and inside, a box. Metal. Small. Set into the foundation. Her hands didn't rush. She reached down carefully, brushed away a thin layer of dust. The box was old, but intact. A small dial sat at the front. A lock. Combination. She sat back slightly. Her eyes moved to the bill again, then to the numbers. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, from recognition. "This is it," she whispered. Not a guess. A knowing. She picked up the notepad from her purse, checked the numbers again. 3 sets. She turned back to the box, placed her fingers on the dial. Paused. The house was silent around her, completely still. Even the wind outside seemed to hold back. She took a breath, then began. Slowly. Carefully. Each turn deliberate. Each number placed exactly as she had written it. The dial clicked softly under her touch. Once. Twice. The final turn felt heavier, more certain. She stopped. Waited. Then a sound. Small, but unmistakable. A click. Lillian closed her eyes for a brief second. Not in relief. Not yet. Just acknowledgement. When she opened them again, she reached forward, lifted the lid, and whatever was inside, she knew before even seeing it, this was what her father had left behind. Waiting. All this time, for her to find it herself. Lillian held the lid in place for a moment before lifting it fully. Not out of fear, not hesitation. Something else. Respect, maybe. For the years that had passed without her knowing this existed. For the hands that had placed it there. Then she opened it. Inside, everything was arranged with care. No clutter. No confusion. Just order. The first thing she saw was a stack of documents, tied neatly with a thin piece of twine. Beneath that, a small bundle of notebooks, worn but intact. And resting on top, a single envelope. Her breath slowed. She reached for the envelope first. Her fingers recognized the paper before her mind did. Thicker than standard, slightly textured, the kind her father used to keep in the top drawer of the kitchen cabinet. She turned it over. No stamp, no seal, just her name. Not Harper. Lillian Brooks. Her hand tightened slightly around it. That name. She hadn't seen it written like this in years, not since before she was married, before everything had been rearranged. She opened it carefully. Inside, a single sheet. Folded once. Her father's handwriting met her immediately. Steady, clean, unrushed. She didn't read it right away. She just looked at it. The shape of the letters, the spacing, the quiet familiarity of it. Then she began. Lillian, if you're reading this, it means you found your way back here. That was always the only way this could happen. I couldn't tell you. Not then. Not without risking everything I was trying to protect, so I left it where I knew you would eventually look. If you ever needed to. Her eyes moved slowly across the page, each word settling into place. I watched carefully, Lillian. From the beginning. Not everything. Not always. But enough. Enough to understand what kind of life you were stepping into. I didn't interfere. That wasn't my place. But I prepared. In case the day came when you would need something that belonged only to you. Her vision blurred slightly. Not from tears, not yet, just the weight of it. She lowered the paper for a moment, looked around the kitchen, the table, the window, the floor beneath her feet. All of it still here. All of it part of something she had never seen clearly before. She lifted the letter again. The farm was never sold. Not the way you believed. It was placed into a trust. Under your name. The name that existed before anything could be taken from you. Everything tied to this land remains yours. It always has. The paperwork beneath this letter will explain the details. You will understand it in time. She exhaled slowly. Looked down at the documents still resting inside the box. Then back to the letter. I didn't do this because I expected something to go wrong. I did it because I knew it might. And I wanted you to have something that no one else could define for you. No matter what happened. He hadn't written much more. That was all. No instructions. No explanations beyond that. Just the quiet certainty of a man who had already done what needed to be done. Lillian folded the letter carefully. Not the way it had been, but gently. As if the paper itself mattered. She set it beside her, then reached for the documents. The twine came loose easily. Inside, legal forms, stamped, filed, detailed. She scanned them slowly, her eyes moving line by line. Trust agreements, property descriptions, transfer records. Every page confirmed the same thing. The farm had never left her. Not legally, not truly. It had simply been placed somewhere no one had thought to look. Her name appeared again and again. Lillian Brooks. Consistent, protected, untouched by everything that had come after. Her hand rested on the paper. Still, grounded. She didn't rush through the rest. She took her time. Read what she could understand. Set aside what she couldn't. There would be time for that later. She reached for the notebooks next. Opened one. The pages were filled with her father's handwriting. Dates. Notes. Simple observations. Weather patterns. Repairs made. Things planted. Things harvested. Nothing grand. Nothing complicated. Just a record. A steady, ongoing presence. He had been here. All those years. Working. Maintaining. Keeping it alive. Not for himself. For her. Lillian closed the notebook slowly. Her hands rested on it for a moment. Then she looked back at the open lockbox. At the empty space where the letter had been. At the documents now spread across the floor. The house around her felt different. Not unfamiliar. Just understood. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Full of everything she had missed. Everything she had never been told. She sat back against the cabinet behind her. Let the moment settle. No rush, no urgency, just stillness. The kind that doesn't come often. Not after a lifetime of moving without stopping. Her eyes moved to the bill lying beside her. The same one. The same $2. She picked it up, turned it over again. The faint numbers still there. The same marks that had led her here. Her fingers traced them once more. Then she looked at the letter. At her name. Brooks. She said it quietly. Out loud. As if testing it. As if seeing if it still belonged to her. It did. She could feel that now. More clearly than anything else. Lillian folded the bill carefully, placed it inside the envelope with the letter, then gathered the documents. Stacked them neatly, the way her father would have, the way she always had. Some habits didn't leave you. They just waited. She looked around the kitchen one last time. Then slowly, she smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just enough. Because for the first time since sitting in that courtroom, she understood something. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to know. Nothing about that day had been what it seemed. Not the bill, not the ending, not even the life she thought she had lost, because it had never been taken. It had just been hidden. Until she came back. And found it. Lillian stood in that kitchen a long time after everything had been opened, read, and understood. The light had shifted without her noticing. Late afternoon now, the kind of light that stretches across the floor in long, quiet lines. Her father used to sit right there, by the window. She could see him now, not clearly, not like a memory you hold onto, but in pieces. The way he folded things carefully, the way he never raised his voice, the way he always seemed to know more than he said. She looked down at the envelope again. At her name. Not the one she had carried for 44 years, the one that had been waiting for her underneath it. All that time, she thought she had been standing on nothing, that she had lost everything. But the truth was, she had been standing on something solid the entire time. She just hadn't known where to look. And him. He had seen it. Before she ever could. He hadn't argued, hadn't warned, hadn't tried to change her life. He had simply built something she could return to. Quietly, patiently, without needing her to understand. Lillian walked to the window. The field stretched out beyond the house, still and open. She placed her hand on the glass. Cold. Real. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she had been left behind. She felt placed. Exactly where she was meant to be. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Because now she could see it. Not what she had lost, but what had been kept for her all along. And she wondered, how many things in a life look like they're gone, when they're really just waiting for you to come back and see them differently?